Hi everybody, it's Lisa here from Holistic Health by Lisa Moan. I'm here for my regular 7:30 on a Monday Facebook Live, and tonight I'm going to be talking about food allergies. So food allergies, when I was a child, nobody had a food allergy. It was completely unheard of, and of course now that situation has completely changed. And if you go into the office in a school, you'll see all the action plans posted up in the reception area. So it's a really big issue at the moment, and it's a very real issue because a lot of times people seem to think that the whole allergy thing is just a bit exaggerated. But then when you have your own child with food allergies, you realise that it's really quite serious, and there's nothing that you can really do about it at the time that your child has a food allergy. So tonight I'm going to be talking about two main types of food allergies, and that's an IgE allergy and an IgG allergy. So that's just the name of the immunoglobulins that are released, but there are two very distinct different types of allergies, so you need to know the name so I can explain the difference. So if you went to the doctor and you said, I think my child is allergic to some foods, they would either do a blood test or send you to a paediatrician that specialises in allergies, and they would test for an IgE reaction. So they'd either do a blood test for the IgE reaction, or they'd do a skin prick test. So they literally draw a little grid on your child's arm and put a liquid that contains various proteins from foods on your child's arm, and then use a little lance to quickly prick your child's skin so that the protein from the allergenic foods gets into your skin. And then they can measure the size of the hive that develops and get an idea of how allergic your child is to that food. So that's the only allergy type that doctors will recognise. And to me it's a little bit humorous because if your child has an IgE allergy to a food, you know about it. So you don't really need to test for that. So with my middle child, she was 6 months old. I gave her a crust of some bread with some mayonnaise on it, and she instantly got hives around her mouth. So I knew it was the mayonnaise because she'd had bread before. And the same with my son. When he was 6 months, he had peas for the first time and exploded with hives on his face. So I was able to go to the doctor and say, my son's allergic to peas, what do we do now? And that's the IgE allergy is the sort that's life-threatening. So that can turn into anaphylaxis. So the first time your child has a reaction, it might just be the hives around the mouth, but then subsequent times it could be anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis doesn't necessarily look like the picture you see with the person with the fish lips and the big puffy eyes. In little kids, it doesn't look like that at all. So my middle daughter actually went into anaphylaxis at preschool when she was 21 months old because they fed her a food that she was allergic to, and she passed out on the floor, struggling to breathe, pale, floppy, and they didn't know it was anaphylaxis because to them anaphylaxis still looked like a puffy face. So she got rushed to emergency and she vomited, and then she came around, so it was kind of obvious that it was a food-related thing. And when we spoke to our doctor, yes, that was anaphylaxis. So luckily my son hasn't had an anaphylactic reaction to the foods that he's allergic to, but he does get severe hives and swelling in his face. So that's IgE. That's the very dramatic, sort of potentially life-threatening allergies where you need to carry an EpiPen with you. Then there's a whole other group of allergies, and they're called IgG reactions, and they're a lot more subtle and they're delayed. So your child might eat a food on a Tuesday, then on a Wednesday they have a sore tummy, or they might eat a food on Tuesday and on Wednesday be really hyperactive or really moody, and you can't really work out because they've eaten like 20 different foods the day before, so it's really hard to work out which food it is. And the foods that children have IgG reactions to are very often the very, very common foods. So they're eating things like wheat and dairy. They might be eating those 3 or 4 times a day and, having reactions every few days. And it's just really hard to piece together what's going on. And that's when a blood test for an IgG reaction is really, really useful, because you can screen, depends how much you want to pay, you can test 44 foods, you can test 200 foods. Just do a blood test, get a printout. Your child has an allergy to, eggs and peanuts, but they're fine with wheat and dairy. So that's a very quick way to get to the answer. And sometimes that result will show that your child has a reaction to 20 different foods, and it's like, oh my God, I can't live like that. But what that really says is that your child has a leaky gut. So it doesn't mean that they need to avoid avocado, broccoli, carrots for the rest of their life. It means that they need to remove those foods, heal up their gut, and then gradually and systematically reintroduce those foods. So I get wonderful, wonderful results when I do an IgG test, especially with kids. So I'm just going to tell you a few success stories now so you can get an idea of what the potential of this test is. So one girl came to me with severe sleep apnea. So she'd been to the doctor, she'd been for the sleep study, and she'd got the results that she had severe sleep apnea, and she needed to get her tonsils and her adenoids out so that she could get to sleep. But instead, the family came to me, we did the IgG test, we removed the foods that she was allergic to, and within days she'd stopped snoring. And when she went back for another sleep study 2 months later, she still was having some apneas, but it had gone from being off the scale, a high number, to just a really low number, and she didn't need to get her tonsils out anymore. And it only took a few days for that family to start to get results, which is really motivating when you're eliminating some of your child's favourite foods. Another child had already been down the road of getting his tonsils out, but was still sick. So chronic postnasal drip, congestion and sinuses, lots of mucus, lots of colds. And again, we did the IgG test, and within days he felt better than he'd felt in his whole life, because he could breathe again. So that was great. So from those two stories, I guess the takeaway message is, if you've been to your doctor and you're going down the route of getting your tonsils out, just do the food allergy test first. It'll cost a couple of $100, but you might be able to save your child surgery and lots of pain. So that's definitely worth investigating. And there's another way to do it as well. So if even the idea of doing a blood test for your child is very overwhelming, you can do what's called an elimination diet. And I'm always really happy because the families that I put on the elimination diet actually do really, really well, because I give them meal plans, recipes, shopping lists, and they go away for 2 or 3 weeks and they eliminate all the commonly allergenic foods and get their child to a point where their symptoms have gone. So their symptoms might be a sore tummy, lethargy, headaches, eczema. Wait until those symptoms have resolved, and then we very systematically reintroduce the foods one at a time and keep a food diary at the same time. And after you've been through that process, so the entire process might take 6 weeks to eliminate them and systematically reintroduce it, you might get to the end of 6 weeks and go, oh wow, it's corn. So the packet of popcorn that I've been giving my child every day is the reason they've been having a sore tummy every day. Wow, that's easy. It's easy to eliminate corn. So that's the option to go for if you don't want to do a blood draw with your child. And the results that I get are the same. So the child who has had a sore tummy all their life gets rid of their sore tummy. The child who's had congestion their whole life gets rid of their congestion. And it is harder work because you need to eliminate all the foods at once. But generally, families like it because it really expands their child's repertoire of what they will eat, and it gets them away from wheat bix and milk for breakfast and crackers for morning tea, etc. So there's lots of other food sensitivities that you can have, but you can't really test for them. So you might be sensitive to nightshades, your child might be sensitive to salicylates or amines, and there isn't really a test for that. You really just have to do an elimination diet. But instead of eliminating the top 8 allergens, you need to eliminate the salicylates and see if you get an improvement, or the amines and see if you get an improvement. So those are different. They're not allergies, but they're food intolerances or food sensitivities, and you need to do that with an elimination diet. So if you've got any questions, either type really quickly now or just post them below and I'll try to answer them. And I'll just tell you about next week's Facebook Live. So it's ADHD Awareness Month, and I'm going to do my Facebook Live next week about what to do if your child has ADHD and you want to avoid medication. And even if your child does take Ritalin or a different medication for their ADHD, what you can do to make that medication work even better. So that's next Monday at 7:30. So if your child might have ADHD or has already been diagnosed with ADHD, you definitely want to listen, because there's some really basic things that you can do at the very start to screen for nutrient deficiencies and that sort of thing. And you can eliminate the whole medication question, which is great. So as I said, any questions, just pop them below and I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you all next week. Thank you.